This is the web transcription service of the Royal Canadian Military Institute, welcoming you to the first Speaker's Dinner of Fall 2012, held on September the 25th. The evening is Police Appreciation Night, and we welcome a speaker with a very contemporary topic. Dave Kroetsch is the CEO of Aeryon Labs of Waterloo, developers of the Scout UAV surveillance drone, a small and easy-to-use instrument that is making waves in security and policing work around the globe.
Well, you stole most of my thunder by telling everybody most of my speech there. As Ed said here, I'm Dave Kroetsch, I'm president of Aeryon Labs. I'll try and keep this as far away as possible from a sales pitch and try and keep it interesting. So Aeryon Labs was founded in 2007, as you mentioned, really with the intent of bringing unmanned systems to the civilian community, so away from the military. Everyone's very familiar with the way UAVs have been used, the Predator in Afghanistan and in applications like that. But the technology has broad applications, whether that's in the civilian community, everything from farming, to applications right here in the law enforcement community. So why do small and unmanned vehicles make sense? So you're taking a look at, well, sorry, here's my agenda. Slide one, got missed. I'm going to cover who uses UAVs and why, a brief little overview of our product, and really tell some of the fun stories about where our product's been used, and give you an idea of what's next for UAVs. Manned aircraft, as everyone is familiar with the Predator, for example, and whether that's a manned aircraft like a Cessna with a camera on the bottom or a large UAV, are expensive, they're complex, and they're slow. So if you're taking a look at a fast response scenario, if you have to pull a helicopter out of a hangar, get it fueled, get the pilots ready, get them to the airport, and that type of thing, it's a very slow process. The airport could be many miles away from the crime scene or from an event that's unfolding in real time, and you can't have a helicopter on scene for sometimes minutes or hours. So where unmanned vehicles make sense is where you have the ability to pull something out of your trunk. So we've targeted the Aeryon Scout, which I have here, and I'll have it sitting on the back after the fact, at the backpack of the soldier and the trunk of the police car. So this is really bringing the technology that for years has been only available to military at a very large scale, really making it accessible to the civilian and police users. People are quite familiar with airplanes, and they're familiar with remote control airplanes, but what people typically aren't familiar with is remote control helicopters. So what the Scout is called a VTOL, a vertical takeoff and landing craft. And where vertical takeoff and landing crafts are much more applicable than remote control or fixed wing aircraft is that they can be launched and recovered very easily. So if you're looking at an urban environment, if you're working in a corridor or some area where it's quite difficult to operate, you can send a small UAV where you can't send a big UAV. You can send a helicopter where you can't send an airplane. An airplane always has to be moving, always has to be flying around or circling a target. A helicopter can sit in place. And that's where these small VTOL UAVs can hover and stare. They're easy to launch and recover, and they can fly in these areas that are otherwise difficult to operate. So as I mentioned, I had an education as an engineer in computer engineering at first, and then in mechanical engineering. And worked for a couple of years and decided this wasn't really what I liked doing. And it turned out what I really liked doing was robotics. During university, I was part of a club, essentially, that did robotics for some academic competitions. And I figured if I enjoyed doing this enough to postpone my schoolwork and work on this, let's find a way to turn that passion into a product and turn that into a company. So in 2007, with a group of friends, began Aeryon Labs. So this company was, again, designed to bring this technology to a broader audience. And we've had the fortunate situation of being able to be involved in some pretty big worldwide public interest situations. We've got during the Gulf oil spill, BP bought some systems, and they were able to use them to fly around the Gulf to look for oil and direct ships where to essentially collect oil. The Libyan rebels were able to use the system in their march on Tripoli. The Coast Guard used the system to guide a tanker into Nome, Alaska. And a U.S. agency was able to help assist some anti-narcotics raids in a Central American country using the Scout. We have a system that's been deployed worldwide. What's really exciting as a Canadian company is that we've got a product that has worldwide applicability. So it's something that was once restricted to technologies only in very small markets and with only, say, the U.S. military. We've got something with the civilian audience has been able to be deployed worldwide. So quickly, without getting into too much detail about the product itself, this is the Aeryon Scout. As I mentioned, it weighs about 3 pounds, and it can be assembled in seconds. Anything that flies is going to crash. That's Murphy's Law. So make a product that can survive that. So our system can fly, and in the case where there's ever an incident, pieces just pop off and can be popped back together. So this can be pulled out of a backpack and assembled. Everyone that wants to fly something to provide a view from the sky wants something different. Somebody may want nighttime operations, so they want a thermal camera. Someone may want to sniff for environmental gases such as carbon dioxide or methane. With the ability to snap and change payloads, this system can be deployed for different uses very, very quickly. It might look like a toy, but it's very, very different. It has 4 propellers, and it looks like one of those AR drone type helicopters that you can buy from Best Buy for $300 and fly around your living room. But where this becomes very different is that this is designed for use in the real world. Bad things don't just happen on bright and sunny days. Bad things happen when it's raining, when it's snowing, when it's hot, when it's cold, and we've designed a product that can be used in all those situations. So the Scout is actually able to fly in real-world conditions, fly in 50 kilometer per hour winds, gusts up to 80 kilometers an hour, sometimes when manned aircraft don't fly. It's rugged and can fly for about 25 minutes. Now, 25 minutes sounds like a short time, but when you take a look at how things have been traditionally done, 25 minutes isn't very long if you need to measure a crime scene, if you need to go out and walk through a field looking for, say a body if you're doing a search and rescue type operation. With a Scout, you can do that same operation in 10 minutes. It's a very different paradigm, which allows things to get done much faster. And while the system, again, looks like a remote control helicopter, it's very different. And the key to the way the Scout works is that you don't need joysticks. When we were designing the product, we went to law enforcement agencies, we went to land surveyors, we went to military, and they said that the idea is that great, but the idea is really great, but we can't use it. A quote that actually we got from a police agency in our area was, "We're not that bright, we've got fat fingers, and we break things." And if you're going to make a technology that we can use, you're going to have to work around that. So we made something that you can break, that pops off and snaps back together. And we said, what can everybody do? We understand that the people that are going to be using this aren't from the Nintendo generation. They don't understand joysticks, they don't play video games, that's not who they are. But we said, well, everybody can use Google Maps. So if we built a product that was as easy to use as Google Maps, then we could make something that would be really useful to that audience. So what we came up with was a touchscreen display. So you hold a tablet in your hand and you touch the screen. So in under 2 minutes, we can train a new operator to be able to fly the system just simply by touching the map. So essentially there's a couple different spots. On the left here you see a video screen, a map, where you can touch it. If you want to fly around the building, you can touch the corner of the building and the system flies there. You don't need to be a pilot. You don't pilot the system, you just tell it where to go and it goes there. On the right of the screen is real-time video, because that's what the user is interested in. They don't care if this thing has 4 propellers or if it has 10. Sometimes they may be laying in a ditch getting shot at. They don't have time to think about how to fly it, and if at any point they're focused on the thing that's on the sky, in the sky, and not on their mission, they've totally lost focus, and that's really what makes our product different. So we've made something from the bit in the sky that's easy to put together to the controller that's easy to use. So we'll just show a quick video here, giving you a little bit of an idea of how the system works. So it's very quiet. With only 4 moving parts, there's very little to go wrong. We had a requirement from the UK Special Forces to understand if somebody far away was holding a gun or a shovel, and we were able to identify that from 1,000 feet away. Technology that only before was possible with very sophisticated technology. We can fly in winds where manned aircraft won't fly, and we're able to read license plates from hundreds of feet away. With camera technology, we're actually able to measure densities of crops on the ground. We're able to change that payload, and it's me stealing my own car. we're able to put other custom payloads on there to do things like signal intelligence and things that low altitude aircraft have been unable to do simply because of the disruption to the general public. And what we're seeing continuously is new applications that we never thought of before. When we invented the product, as I mentioned, we were targeting at the backpack of the soldier and the trunk of the police car. But we've had interest from land surveyors. We've had interest from an archaeologist in Egypt, from Environment Canada, who's doing air quality sampling and that type of thing, to applications where we're measuring radiation from the sky. So what I'd like to go through now quickly is just some of the applications, some of the more fun stuff. The law enforcement applications, where the system is able to replace manned aircraft and is able to change the way things are done on the ground. And I'll give a couple of practical examples. So on the law enforcement side, we're looking at things like covert surveillance and evidence gathering, where a manned helicopter would be very loud and would be very intrusive. The scout can go in very quiet at a high altitude and leave scenes undisturbed. Crime scene and accident investigation, searching for missing persons, fire and hazmat situations where you don't want to send manned aircraft or personnel in, you can send a robot in. Oftentimes, ground robots can be difficult to maneuver through terrain. In situations where you're able to access the area more easily by air, the scout's able to go in and gather that same information. And on the military side, the tactical situational awareness, anti-piracy, launching from boats are all capabilities of the scout. So I'll just go through a couple quick applications and give you, again, some practical examples. On the public safety side, critical infrastructure inspection is a capability. So we worked with the Korean Army and I don't remember exactly which agency it was, but another agency within Korea to do security for the G50 nuclear summit. So we actually had 50 of the world's nuclear powers in Korea for a summit, and we were able to provide security, multiple scouts positioned around Seoul, Korea, sending information back to a command post. And in this case, they're looking for bombs or for other suspicious events around the city of Seoul. They're looking under bridges. They're doing critical infrastructure inspection. And in those cases, that can be everything from oil and gas refineries to electrical stations. Because you're able to get close to objects, the scout is able to detect small fractures in airplane propellers. The scout's able to detect disturbances in electrical power plants. You can see a thermal image, for example, in the bottom right. In the oil and gas world, where this is a highly explosive environment, the scout's able to go in dangerous scenarios where you wouldn't want to send a manned helicopter and inspect infrastructure. Another application is looking at locating illegal crops. So in the farming world, the cameras that we've designed are used for taking pictures of farmers' fields and understanding where they need to apply fertilizer or where they need to apply water. In the policing world, we actually we worked with Halton Regional Police, and they were able to locate, this was just 2 weeks ago, about $744,000 of marijuana being grown in farmers' fields from the air, something that they couldn't do from the ground. Typically what they do is they rent time on a military helicopter, sometimes costing $20,000 to $30,000 a day. And of course, that day has to be booked with this military helicopter, sometimes months in advance. Everyone knows when this day is coming. That winds up being leaked, and then the crops are harvested prior to this event. And of course, it's done in a very old-fashioned way. They'll have a pilot on the helicopter with a pair of binoculars flying over a farmer's field, and when they spot something with flags, they'll literally direct an officer through a corn maze on the ground to locate the marijuana in the middle of the field. With the scout, they're able to fly in, take pictures, locate it, get a GPS coordinate, walk to that coordinate with their GPS receiver, and collect the crop. So it's a very different way of doing things. And it has been very successful specifically for Halton Regional Police. Crime scene and accident investigation. We're working with the OPP, a specific example where the scout can save time and can save money, substantial amount of money. 2 Fridays ago, there was an accident on the 407. There was a dump truck that hit a car that was pulled over onto the side of the road. That resulted in an accident that had all 6 lanes of the 407 closed. For the 407, what that means is a 6-figure loss per hour of revenue because their highway is closed. So if you take a look at what that means in terms of cleanup, 1.5 hours was spent mapping the crime scene, and then 1.5 hours was spent cleaning up the crime scene. We did a mapping exercise with the OPP, and we were able to reduce that amount of time from 90 minutes to 12 minutes. So from the point of view of the 407, this is hundreds of thousands of dollars of savings. And if you take a look at the same example on the 401, it costs the province somewhere on the order of $10 million an hour every time the 401 is shut down. So this type of technology can really save a lot of money. So crime scene and accident investigation gives you a very different viewpoint from the air, where measurements typically are done on the ground with everything from measuring tapes to laser systems, and this can really reduce the time and efficiency there and increase efficiency. Hazmat situations where you don't want to introduce a person into harm's way. So we did some work with a group out of New York State Police, where there were some floods in New York State. The area was essentially, their airports were underwater, so they couldn't use their helicopters and manned aircraft. And in a situation like this, they'd be able to launch the scout and look for people on the roofs of their homes to rescue them. UAVs are practical in tactical situations. So we've worked with the USDEA, the Drug Enforcement Agency, and the National Guard to help keep people out of harm's way. Where typically right now, SWAT team planning is done with the use of Google Maps. So essentially, a team of analysts will use maps from Google, and the problem there is that these maps are low quality and they're out of date. And they had a very specific example where they went in to do a bust of a drug bust, and the team got into a whole lot of trouble because they climbed over a fence and found a swimming pool that wasn't there last year. And they lost the element of surprise because one team from one side made it in and the other team didn't make it in because they were stuck by the swimming pool, and officers were actually injured in that case. So by being able to provide imagery in a much faster and more timely manner, really could have saved lives. Fire management, again, some pretty obvious applications here, where a real difference between what's currently available today and what UAV technology can bring is the low altitude thermal imagery, where you can take a look at hot spots from not from ground level and not from aerial level at thousands of feet where an airplane might fly, but somewhere in between. Searching for missing persons, again, another application. We worked with Chatham Kent Police as part of the search for 25-year-old Brandon Sands. This was in Wallaceburg, I believe. They don't have the ability to buy a helicopter, but for, again, a few $1,000s a month, they were able to work with this type of technology to get search and rescue capabilities in their area. Another neat application is explosives disposal. So you don't want to send a person into harm's way when there's a potential explosive in the area. And sometimes, in this particular case, it's not a challenge, but sometimes ground robots can't get there because whether there's stairs or there's rocks or there's walls, and that's where the aerial viewpoint really changes things. So we did a large area survey. This is we collected 60 images of an area in less than 5 minutes, and we were able to do some reconstruction with those images to build a map. So essentially, you're updating Google Maps instantly. So the kind of imagery that typically would only be available at high altitudes is now available at low altitudes. And where that really becomes important is, let's say it's cloudy. So you may not be able to fly manned aircraft, or if you have an airplane, you have to fly at a very high altitude. Here you can fly a scout below the clouds and collect this imagery. So what we were able to do was get very detailed images that are actually admissible in court. And some of the imagery that we've collected with Halton Regional Police has been used in court. Really a first in Canada for imagery from a UAV used in court cases. So you take the old imagery from Google Maps, overlay the new imagery that you're able to collect really in 5 minutes, give you a whole new situational awareness, construct 3D renderings of that area. So understand if your team's going to be running up and over a hill or in a difficult situation. Take those images, put them in Google Maps from multiple angles, build up that 3D model, and then actually have a full 3D reconstruction that you can plan your operation around. This is the type of technology and the type of imagery that's just been totally inaccessible to anyone but the most wealthy militaries of the world. And this is now the type of thing that can be accessible to everyone from farmers to local law enforcement agencies. We actually did some discussions with Durham Regional Police. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the torture house case that they're working through right now. But the big problem that they had is that everything they were doing was from the ground, and it turns out that the way the criminal was accessing this facility was from a path that they couldn't see from the ground. And if they had aerial imagery, they would have been able to see that right away. Now, the system's not only useful in UAVs are not only useful in law enforcement applications, but in everything from, as I mentioned, farming applications to some environmental assessment situations. So this is an example of some work that we did with the University of Alaska, NOAA, which is the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, based in the US, where the system was launched and recovered from a boat flying in the Aleutian Islands in the Bering Sea. So this is essentially in the middle of nowhere. They performed seal counts. Now that may not seem important. Why they use seal counts is that seals are actually an indicator species of ocean health. So this is something that's important to them. So they were able to launch and recover the system from a boat in very difficult situations and count seals on the islands there. Now, where that becomes interesting in the police and military world is many operations are conducted from sea or from boat, whether that's Navy operations or everything from the Halton Regional Police and Toronto Regional Police have jurisdictions in the water as well. So here, the system operated in the Aleutian Islands, again in the middle of the Bering Sea in Alaska, where it was launched and recovered from a converted fishing vessel that had been converted into a research vessel. They deployed the system from the ship, launching it in very, very difficult conditions, where the system was able to be deployed from that ship. What's really, again, an advantage of using a helicopter is that you can bring it back to the boat and directly recover that vehicle. In this case, because it's so small, just by catching it. Because UAVs can be small and quiet, they also don't disturb the wildlife, and we were able to get some imagery and construct 3D maps of these islands, which were very useful to the scientists that were studying the area. They were able to count seals, both male, female, the young, and the wounded seals, all from the imagery. Then, at the end of their mission, bring the UAV back to the boat and literally pluck it out of the sky. It was pretty neat to see the system operate in such difficult conditions. It literally some of the harshest conditions in the world. I don't think there were any nuclear bombs here. But it was a whole lot like an episode of 24, where we worked with a drug enforcement agency to go in under the cover of darkness, literally into the middle of the jungle. Not a situation where a manned aircraft could be used, because the local airport was run by a drug lord. And you couldn't use manned personnel on the ground, because all of the farmers in the area had a feudal loyalty to that drug lord, which meant if you sent a law enforcement agency in, the farmers would be immediately notify the drug lord and put the law enforcement group in harm's way. So back in 2009, the system was launched, again, from a group that went into the jungles of Central America under the cover of darkness, launched and sent. They cut down the long grass to make a launch pad in the middle of the jungle, sent the system about 800 meters away, and sent it in to image the drug lord's compound. They were able to collect photos of the surrounding area, something that they just didn't have before, because the Google Earth imagery of the area was very poor, and again, no manned aircraft. And they were able to build a full map of this compound. Typically what had been done before is they'd load up an armored vehicle, drive it in and plow it through the walls with guns blazing, hoping to catch the bad guy, with no idea what was on the other side of that wall. On a typical raid, they'd lose between 1 and 5 members of their team. So very, very high risk scenarios. With the Scout, they were able to go in, understand where the openings and exits were, where the gaps were, how many people they were likely to encounter on the other side of the wall. You can even see in the bottom of this image, there's a man working, and he has no idea that the UAV is in the air taking pictures of him. They executed a raid on this particular compound, were able to arrest the people inside the compound, and not a single person was harmed as a result of the imagery that they were able to collect. Probably one of the most high-profile uses of the Scout in particular has been with the Libyan rebels. Again, a technology that previously had been limited only to the richest militaries of the world and is now really possibly available to these small types of militaries. They were able to send the Scout in with very, very minimal training. Again, something that you wouldn't expect a small army or a small country's army to have the capabilities or capacity to operate an unmanned vehicle. They were able to be trained, despite the language barrier, in less than a day, and they were operational on the front line almost immediately. They were able to locate the location of the enemy's firing positions and understand who was on the other side in order to plan tactically. A very exciting use, really, for a Canadian product to be used in such an exciting worldwide application. This video may or may not work. There we go. So working in desert scenarios and desert situations is a very hostile and difficult environment. With imagery from the sky, they gained a whole new perspective on their battlefield, and they were able to collect this imagery and build maps. You'll see here the pictures that the system takes are extremely high resolution, the type of imagery that really you can't even get from satellites. And again, a big problem with satellite imagery is that it's, of course, by definition, almost always out of date. This can be collected directly by the operator and have that imagery in an operator's hands. From here, you can see the bald spot on the back of the guy's head. The imagery is that good. Because the system operates in a very different way, where you don't need joysticks, you don't have to see it to fly it. Again, quite a different operational situation, which means you can operate it at night. Because you don't have to see it, you just touch on a map and you tell it where to go. They were able to use it, fly it, and observe enemy gunning positions as well. One of the very exciting things for our company as a result of this is that it was actually the UK Special Forces helping the Libyan rebels in country that were piloting the Scout for some of these operations. Those of you familiar with various military equipment would probably recognize the Russian era mortars in some of that video there. So what's next for UAVs? I think what we're really going to see is regulations changing. One of the biggest challenges for UAVs and small things is that they've been used as hobbycraft for years, and regulations just aren't yet at the same level as technology. As this technology moves to be mainline, you're going to see prices coming down, and it's going to be tailored for more applications. And really just better technology being moved. As you know, what an iPhone can do today, a computer the size of a large room couldn't do 20 years ago. And you'll see the same sort of level of improvements in UAVs. I think that what you'd expect to see is police using UAVs to gather crime scene evidence, to help clear traffic accidents and find grow operations. You'd expect to see UAVs being used at major world events, whether that's the Olympics or other types of big events, and industrial uses of UAVs, everything from inspection to farmers. So with that, I'd like to close the presentation and open the floor to a few questions. Yeah.
You say you just point on your tablet. How does the Scout avoid obstacles like hydro wires and maybe a relief that's up and down and buildings that are different sizes? How does it avoid?
So the Scout is not a fully autonomous system in that there's still an operator in the loop. So there's still a pilot behind the map that watches for obstacles, that watches for terrain. So you click on the map and you allow the system to fly, but you're, as a pilot, responsible for avoidance of obstacles. Sure.
My concern with this is the security of it. The cartels in Central and South America, as we know, have more money than God. What's to stop them buying these?
So technology like this, while it may seem like toy technology, is actually controlled by the Department of Foreign Affairs here in Canada. So we work with DFATE, and they essentially do that quality checking and that customer checking of every customer that we have outside of Canada. So they're helping to control that. Yeah.
What would a unit like that sell for?
It depends on who it's being, who the customer is, if they're domestic or international, and what version of the product they use. But it can go anywhere from $60,000 to say $100,000. That being said, we offer leases, so we can actually sell the system for $3,000 a month lease, I think. And when you compare that to helicopter time, that's an hour or two of helicopter time, so it can quickly pay for itself. Yeah.
How much weight can that be carried?
So the system weighs about 3 pounds. It can carry about 200 grams, and that 200 grams is typically consumed by a camera. So it's really designed as an observation platform. Yes?
When you were answering the questions, you were saying the pilot has to control it. Do you need somebody that is a licensed pilot?
Not necessarily, no, not at all. An operator, I suppose, may be a better term for the person on the ground.
Part two of that question is, you're currently deployed with the police services in Ontario?
Yep.
The regional police?
All regional police as well as the OPP. Yeah.
Okay, and the police services across the country, they require a special flight operations certificate issued by the Department of Transportation?
Yes, that's correct. Transport Canada issues what are called special flight operations certificates for the legal use of these systems within Canada. Essentially, there's a line drawn. One side of that is recreational users, and the other side is everyone else. So we're governed by the same laws that you'd have to use to fly a 747. And essentially, Transport Canada evaluates users on a case-by-case basis, whether they're farmers, whether they're police officers, and give them very different usage parameters depending on what it is they need. So a farmer is allowed to fly over their field and not over people and not over populated areas, whereas a police department may have a very different set of operational requirements because they might need to fly over members of the public to provide security. They might need to fly over a crime scene or in an urban area or near an airport because they have a different operational requirement.
Sorry, the third part, DOT is currently evaluating their SFOC requirements, and I think they're doing that in consultation with police services. Is there something that people in this room can do to help advance those issues so that law enforcement has greater access to this kind of technology?
I think there's probably two things, and this is something that that we've learned actually in consultation with the Halton Regional Police as well as OPP. One is the federal regulations and access to airspace, which again the active involvement of the law enforcement community is very important. The second is the internal policies and procedures and usage of this type of technology is actually, to some degree, a bigger challenge. The SFOC process is a well understood process by members of the development community like myself. But what is challenging actually is how do we develop those internal policies and procedures within law enforcement for the usage and operation of these types of vehicles. So that's sort of a twofold answer there. And I think the biggest piece that the law enforcement community can develop is those internal procedures. And there's a fourth part, yes.
Last piece of this, do you envision an opportunity for law enforcement leaders to come together in consultation with regulators and industry to be able to formulate those applications?
Absolutely. And there's a couple initiatives along those lines that are underway. I mean, I know Transport Canada specifically is working through that. There are industry groups that are working with law enforcement and with some of those within the law enforcement community that are spearheading the initiative to try and develop those, that operational procedure both on the internal side as well as with Transport Canada. Yes.
David, just as a follow-up to that one, how does this technology, what kind of interaction have you had with the Privacy Commissioner's office?
We haven't had a whole lot. And the reason for that is the law enforcement community has been dealing with aircraft with cameras on board and privacy laws for years. It's pretty well understood the situations where data can be collected, whether that's airborne data or ground data, what is considered admissible, what is considered inadmissible, what you need a warrant for and what you don't need a warrant for. And really we're following under a lot of those guidelines that already exist. Go ahead, Matt. Yeah.
I'm presuming the limit on flight time is because of battery considerations.
Right.
Is it a quick change battery so it can be immediately redeployed?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, we've designed a system that can pop together and can change a battery literally as fast as that. Battery technology is something that's changing very, very quickly. Especially in the world of electric vehicles, there's a lot of innovation happening there. So we'll be riding the coattails of the electric vehicle inventors and bringing that technology here.
Do you see it being solar powered in the future?
Unfortunately, there's not a whole lot of surface area there for solar panels. We might need something much too big for it to carry, but for now it's going to be battery.
On behalf of the RCMI, this is Eric Morse saying thank you for listening to us today. Watch for announcements of future event transcripts And we hope that you will be able to join us in person for our regular speakers events. Once again, thank you for tuning into our podcasts, and have a wonderful day.